Yo, what is going on YouTube, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It is your boy Jay Labrius, another 2023 NFL Round 1 mock draft. This is a crazy one, a lot of trades, a lot of surprising picks, and the NFL draft is coming up in just 12 days from now, not even 2 weeks away. I'm super excited. I'm going to be getting a lot of mock drafts out and other videos regarding the draft and all the news, trades, all that stuff up until the draft and then during the draft. So hope you guys are excited. I'm very excited. And yeah, let's just get into the mock draft. Thank you guys for clicking on the video. I hope you guys enjoy. But without further ado, let's just get to the video. So at pick number 1, we have the Panthers. And this is interesting because on all my other mock drafts, I've made it CJ Stroud at 1, Bryce Young at 2. Not in this mock draft. Now, I am very sold still, or at least pretty high on the fact that the Panthers could go CJ Stroud at 1. I think he fits exactly what Frank Reich looks for in a quarterback. The size, the height, the pocket awareness, everything. I think CJ Stroud is exactly what Frank Reich looks for in a quarterback. But there have been trends over the last week or so that Bryce Young is now the Carolina Panthers' favorite, as well as just a couple days ago, the cognitive tests were taken, and there are rumors, and I don't know if these rumors are confirmed or not, but that Bryce Young scored a very high cognitive test. I heard one Twitter post say that he scored higher than Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, I believe. And CJ Stroud got a pretty low cognitive test score, and not that it was super bad necessarily, but it was just lower than you would like. And I had another friend tell me that there's never been a good quarterback in the NFL who scored a low cognitive test. Now, there have been horrible quarterbacks in the NFL that scored very high cognitive tests, but there's never been a good, star quarterback in the NFL that has scored a low cognitive test. So that is interesting. I don't know how much, owners and teams look into those cognitive tests and how much they affect the draft value. But as of now, Bryce Young is looking to be the favorite for the Panthers. And again, I still think CJ Stroud is a major possibility for them. But as of right now, I'm going to go with Bryce Young at pick 1 to the Panthers. And that hurts because for a long time, I was saying CJ was the guy, and I was pretty confident on it. So if he's not, I'm not going to care too much, but he has been the guy I've been saying is going to go number 1 for a while now. But the last couple weeks, the trends are looking like it's going to be Bryce Young at pick number 1 to the Panthers. And I don't think it's a bad move. I don't think there's really a lose situation here with Bryce Young or CJ Stroud to the Panthers. I think Bryce Young does have the higher ceiling. He's better outside of the pocket. And, if you can work with him and develop him, I think under Frank Reich, he could be a great quarterback. So it kind of comes down to what you're looking for. And again, I still like CJ Stroud, but in this case, we're going to go with Bryce Young at pick 1 to the Panthers. Up next at pick 2, the Texans on the board. And this is an interesting one because, again, I've said they could go quarterback. There's a 99% chance they do go quarterback. But you look at their 2024 draft capital. They have 2 round 1s. And a lot of people, and even I've thought about this, thought that they could use that draft capital as well as some other to trade up for Caleb Williams, trade up to get the number 1 overall pick in the draft for Caleb Williams, or at least a very high pick in the draft to get Caleb Williams. And now there's 2 sides of this. One, I saw somebody say you don't draft a 2023 draft. You don't draft 2023 for 2024. You draft for this year. But someone else said if you are pretty confident that you can trade up and get the best quarterback prospect in, the last decade or something, then you might as well go ahead, focus on other needs in this year and then trade up in 2024 for Caleb Williams. So it kind of comes down to if you're confident enough that you can trade up and you have the capital to get the pick that you need to secure Caleb Williams. So I could see them going with someone like Jalen Carter, with someone like Will Anderson. And remember, DeMeco Ryans is a defensive coordinator. He is the former defensive coordinator for the Niners. He knows exactly how important a defensive front is. And Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, both on the board. The Texans need help on the defensive front. I could very well see them going one of these 2. I think it would kind of be, one of the dark horse moves, but I could see it. Am I going to do that in this mock draft? No, I still think for this one we'll go quarterback. Now, in a future mock draft, probably the next one I get out, we might shake things up and they do go defensive front, whether it's Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. Maybe they even trade down if there's a team looking to trade up for, CJ Stroud because he's still on the board, or Bryce Young because, one of them will still be on the board. Maybe a team wants to trade up. I think there's a lot the Texans can do with this pick. And for this one, though, we'll keep it pretty basic. We're going to go quarterback. Now, who they go with quarterback is the interesting thing. It is not CJ Stroud. And mainly, I'm not going to go CJ Stroud here just because I do not know the true results of the cognitive test, and I don't know how important they are. But if CJ Stroud did score a pretty low result, that could really affect his draft capital. I don't know, but based on what my friend told me, cognitive tests are very important. I don't know a lot about them, but if an NFL team isn't sold on CJ Stroud because of the cognitive test, then, I don't see any reason why the Texans would take him. And who are they going to go with? Because I said they're going to go quarterback. They're not going to go CJ Stroud. I have them going with the 3rd best quarterback in the class Anthony Richardson. And, if I'm the Texans, I like it. You're in a rebuilding process, and you might as well go out and get a quarterback who is a freak athlete that, in a year or 2 or 3, you can really develop to be that great quarterback, kind of like a Josh Allen quarterback. I like Anthony Richardson. He's a freak athlete, one of the best combine performances by a quarterback we've ever seen. And I think if you can develop him, I think he could be like Cam Newton 2.0, but, last in the league for 10 to 15 years. And I think if the Texans don't go CJ Stroud, and now if Bryce Young falls to the Texans, I think they would take Bryce Young at 2, unless they're planning for the future in Caleb Williams next year. But if CJ Stroud's available and they're not sold on the cognitive test scores because of that, I could see them going Anthony Richardson. Now, if it's not Bryce Young, I think, and it's between like Anthony Richardson or defensive front, I very well could see them going with something like Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. But for this one, we'll keep it interesting, going with a quarterback that has a very, very high ceiling in Anthony Richardson. And I like it. Like I said, when you're rebuilding, you want to, shoot for the stars. And that's what they're going to do with Anthony Richardson. Up next at pick 3, this is where CJ Stroud's fall ends. I think Shane Steichen sees him available at pick 3 now. I think a lot of teams, no matter what his cognitive tests are still going to look to trade up with the Cardinals, especially if it's CJ Stroud still on the board. I think that would be a dream situation for the Cardinals if CJ Stroud's still on the board at 3. That would boost the trade value a ton. So who are the Cardinals going to trade down with? Now, this one's going to be pretty basic because, again, I couldn't really find a team wanting to give up a whole lot that would make a ton of sense. So we'll just go with the Colts. Shane Steichen, make sure he secures CJ Stroud. I think if they could get CJ Stroud, that would be a blessing. That would be a miracle. And so I don't know exactly what they'd give up. I just said a 4th and the 79th overall. I think, a 4th and I think a 35th would be too much for moving back one spot. So we'll give up the 79th and maybe like a 138. For the 3rd overall pick, Shane Steichen moves up, make sure no one else can take CJ Stroud, and they go with CJ Stroud. I think that would be a dream scenario for the Colts. Now, I could also see them sitting there because there have been reports that they really like Will Levis as well. So, if I'm the Colts, you could sit there and just wait to see what happens if the Cardinals trade down. If, if someone trades up with the Cardinals to take either CJ Stroud or Will Levis and then the other one falls to you, you could do that. But I think CJ Stroud on the board at 3 is just a no-brainer for the Colts to try to trade up and get him. So I like it, CJ Stroud at pick 3 to the Colts. Up next at pick 4, we have the Cardinals. And for this one, it's obviously going to come down between Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. And for this one, I have them going Jalen Carter. I think Jonathan Gannon, a defensive-minded head coach, and I think if you're looking at that defense, you're looking at a rebuilding defense, you're just going to take the best defensive player available, and I think Jalen Carter is. Now, if Jonathan Gannon can look past the off-field issues again, I think it'd be a no-brainer. I think Will Anderson would be a better guy to rebuild the defense around, but when you're rebuilding a defense, to me, I'm looking at it, and I just want to take the best player available. They need just as much help on the interior D-line as they need on the edge. So I like Jalen Carter. And again, if Jonathan Gannon, and I don't know what his thoughts are on the off-field issues. I don't really know much about him or his coaching traits. But if he is able to look past the off-field issues for Jalen Carter, I think that would be a no-brainer. I like Will Anderson. I just think you take the best defensive player available when you're rebuilding your defensive front. Next at pick 5, we have the Seahawks. Jalen Carter just got snatched a pick before them. So who do they go with? I think Will Anderson. I think they'll go with whoever's on the board, whether it's Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. I think if Jalen Carter's on the board, it's not going to be a problem for them. They've taken gambles with off-the-field issues that players have had before. I don't think Jalen Carter would be an exception. I think if he's on the board, they go with him. They need help on the interior and that defensive front, but they also need help on the edge. Uchenna Nwosu's contract is up next year, so you're thinking long-term as well as just an immediate impact player, which Will Anderson is. So I don't think it's like a lose situation. I don't think they're upset with Will Anderson. I think they would have gone Jalen Carter over Will Anderson, but you're winning either way. Next up, we have the Lions, and I think this pick is a little more obvious now after trading away Jeff Okudah. I think they go and replace him and get another cornerback now. That secondary has been upgraded a lot this offseason, but losing Jeff Okudah does hurt. I think they go with a guy like Christian Gonzalez, my cornerback one. He's very versatile, as it says. He's good against press, off, man, zone, outside, inside. He can do it all, and Jeff Okudah was that versatile cornerback they had, a versatile secondary member they had. I think they go and replace him with Christian Gonzalez. He's my cornerback one. Big, physical, great ball skills, versatile. He can do it all. So I like Christian Gonzalez. And again, I see a guy like Tyree Wilson on the board. That would be very tempting, but I think you want to go and lock down that secondary and replace Jeff Okudah at pick 6. Next up, at pick number 7, we have the Raiders. Now, Will Levis on the board. That is definitely very intriguing, but I don't think they go quarterback here. I don't think they really need to go quarterback. I think they have bigger needs than a developmental quarterback. You guys know I'm not very high on them going for a quarterback last mock draft. I believe I had them trading up with the Cardinals. This one, they're actually going to trade down with the Tennessee Titans. There have been a lot of reports that Malik Willis is not the quarterback of the future for the Titans. They're not very high on him. Now, my thoughts on that are that is really stupid thinking. I don't know how you could judge a rookie quarterback based off of a couple games he played under a horrible O-line and an XFL caliber receiving core and a terrible offensive coordinator. I really don't get that. I don't know how you can look at that offense and blame a quarterback when you have pretty much everything else is awful. You know, your O-line, your receiving core, your offensive coordinator, everything is terrible. And you look at your rookie quarterback and say it's on him and he's not going to be the quarterback of the future. I don't understand that thinking at all. Now, there are a lot of reports and rumors that they could be one of the teams to trade up with the Cardinals to pick 3. In this instance, Will Levis is still on the board at pick 7. So I think the Raiders are looking to trade down and get some more draft capital. Now, another thing that I don't agree with this is, you know, the Titans don't even have like any draft capital. They only have 6 picks in this draft. But, you know, we're going to keep it realistic. I guess it's realistic that there is a possibility the, you know, Titans do trade up for Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. If they trade up for a quarterback again, I do not like that decision at all. I think, you know, that team has so much to focus on, both on the offense and on the defense. I don't know why you would want to trade up to get another quarterback, but you know, that seems to be one of the trends. And I think in this one, they'll give up their 11th and their 72nd, or would they give up their 41st? We'll say 72nd for this one. I mean, again, they don't have like any draft capital. So I think they'll give up their 11th and their 72nd for pick 7, force the trade. The Titans trade up to take Will Levis. And I hate doing that. I really am not a fan of this one. But again, the trends and the rumors have pointed that the Titans will trade up. And now the reports that they are not happy with Malik Willis. You know, who knows? There is a very good chance they do trade up. Again, I'm not a fan of it. I think they should, you know, build that offense, you know, and continue to improve it, fix the O-line. But if they are happy and, you know, want to go ahead and trade up for a quarterback, then so be it. And so they trade up with the Raiders at pick 7 to take Will Levis. Up at pick 9, we have the Bears. And I think in this mock draft, or not in this mock draft, but in the actual draft, protecting Justin Fields has to be your biggest need and your biggest plan going into this draft is to solidify that O-line, because right now that O-line is terrible. And it doesn't matter who you add. It doesn't matter if you add DJ Moore, another great receiver in this draft. You need to protect Justin Fields because last year he was running for his life. So I think with pick 9, there's all the offensive tackles you can imagine available to you. I think you go with the best tackle in the class in Paris Johnson. I absolutely love him. He's my tackle one, 6'6", 313 pounds. He can also play guard if need be. He can play right guard. That's what he played in 2021. And then they flexed him over to left tackle last year. So he's very versatile. That's what you need. You need a versatile offensive tackle when you have a bad O-line that needs desperate improvement everywhere. Paris Johnson, eventually, you know, like I said, for the main part, he will hold down that left tackle spot. But if you absolutely need to, you can flex him to guard. So I like Paris Johnson at pick 9. Again, protecting Justin Fields and getting him a good O-line has to be the number one priority in this draft. Up next, we have the Eagles, and they can go a lot of different options or a lot of different ways with this pick. I like Devin Witherspoon mainly because he's super versatile. He can play on the outside. He can play in the nickel. He can play in the slot. Some people have even said he can play safety, and they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson, so you could even plug him in for C.J. Gardner-Johnson to have him be a replacement. I like him. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he is an absolute playmaker. He's only 5'11", but like I said, he's a playmaker. He's very aggressive, very physical, and he's very versatile, which I think would be great because you can kind of use him how you want in Philadelphia. And you could, you know, like I said, you can even put him at safety if need be, and you could kind of develop him there, put him in the slot, put him in the nickel, put him wherever you want and develop him. So I like it, and he can kind of be a rotational piece for that secondary. Up next, at pick 11, we have the Raiders. Now, I think you could go a couple of different ways. They traded down with the Titans, by the way, for Will Levis. Now, who did the Raiders go with? I think you go with someone like Peter Skoronski, get some versatility on that O-line. They desperately need help on the interior. You could go, I think, you know, tight end is a dark horse move. They do need another tight end after losing, I'm trying to blank on his name, Darren Waller. You could go tight end. I don't think they'd go tight end in the first round, though. I'm looking at the interior D-line, and I see Kalijah Kinsey on the board. I really like Kalijah Kinsey. Not the biggest guy, but he's very explosive off the ball, and he's a great run stopper, kind of a play disruptor type of player. They desperately need help on that interior. You know, you could also go secondary. Here you could go with someone like Joey Porter or Deontay Banks. but I think you really need to address that interior D-line first. And, if you can manage to beef up that D-line, the defensive front, I think that will help a growing secondary develop just because it takes some of the pressure off of them. So I like going Kalijah Kinsey here at pick 11 to the Raiders. Again, major addition to that interior D-line. And, a couple of different ways you could go. They have a lot of options at pick 11, but I think the interior D-line is one of the bigger needs that they need to address early on in the draft. Up next, at pick 12, we have the Texans. Now, they could go receiver. They drafted Anthony Richardson at pick 2. They didn't go Bryce Young. They didn't go C.J. Stroud. They went Anthony Richardson. Now, do you go out and get him a receiver and someone like Quentin Johnson or Jackson Smith-Njigba? What do you want to do? I think there's a good chance that at pick 12 they focus on the defensive front no matter who they go with. Rather they go with someone on the defensive front at pick 2, go with a quarterback, whoever they go with at pick 2. I think still there's a very good chance at pick 12 they focus on the defensive front. The only other thing I could see them doing is going out and getting a receiver. For this one though, for this one, we're going to keep it interesting. DeMeco Ryans is a defensive-minded head coach, and he wants to, and in my opinion, he would be very happy to beef up that defensive front at pick 12. And again, I think you could go receiver, but this is they have a very early second. So second rounder, you have pick 33. So, at pick 33, I'm looking, Josh Downs could still be on the board, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman. There's still going to be good depth. So I like going edge rusher here because there are a lot of good edge rushers in the first round. I like Nolan Smith. I think they desperately need help on that defensive front. You could also go with someone like Bryan Bresee if you want to beef up the interior. But I like Nolan Smith just because he's such a freak athlete. He had such a good combine performance. 6'2", 238 pounds, but he had such a good combine performance, and he's just such a freak athlete. And I like Nolan Smith. I think he brings that explosiveness, that physicality on that defensive front that they really need. And I think it's a major addition. I think, like I said, you could go someone like Jackson Smith-Njigba, get a good slot receiver with great hands to kind of be a safety blanket for Anthony Richardson, but Nolan Smith, who would light up that defensive front, and I think that's exactly what you need at pick 12. Next up, we have the Jets. Now, for this one, they do trade for Aaron Rodgers, but they're not giving up their 13th overall pick. It's been made very clear they do not want to give up that 13th overall pick. So for this one, we'll trade for, not Jordan Love. We will trade for Aaron Rodgers. They will give up their 42nd, 43rd, and we'll say 8th round 3 in 2024 for Aaron Rodgers. Now, who do they take with their 13th overall pick? I think there's two main options. You go out and get a slot receiver like Jackson Smith-Njigba to be a great safety blanket for Aaron Rodgers. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba would be lethal pairing him with Aaron Rodgers, but I think the bigger need is that offensive line. I think there are a couple major holes on there, and I like Peter Skoronski. Now, there has been talk that he is too small to play tackle. I think this is my thought on it. You try him at left tackle. If he doesn't pan out and he's not a good tackle, then you just kick him in the guard because you need help on that interior. And Peter Skoronski is probably the most versatile tackle or O-lineman in this class. So I think you put him at left tackle. If he doesn't work, you just put him at guard. Another option is you put him at right tackle, move Micah Becton to left tackle. If he still doesn't work at right tackle, you just kick him into guard. So I like Peter Skoronski because no matter where he is on that O-line, he's definitely going to be making an impact, whether it's on the interior or on the left tackle spot. So I like him. Even if he doesn't pan out at tackle, you can still use him on the interior, which is what I like. I think you want to protect Aaron Rodgers as much as possible, and you do that by getting Peter Skoronski, where no matter where he is on the line, he's going to be protecting Aaron Rodgers. Up next, at pick 14, we have the Patriots, and the Patriots don't think like any other team during drafts. I've said this every mock draft, and I will continue to say it. They never do until they go with kind of the more basic, obvious pick. I'm never going to say that they think normally because they don't. With that being said, who do they go with? I think wide receiver is the biggest need. We already got Juju Smith-Schuster. Even if the Patriots go out and they get someone like DeAndre Hopkins or Jerry Jeudy, I still think you want to get another receiver in the early rounds. And I really hope we can land a good receiver in the draft of the early rounds. I would love for them to get, if they don't go receiver at pick 14, I would love for them to go with a receiver down the line like Cedric Tillman. I like Cedric Tillman just because of his size. They don't really have any tall, big receivers on that receiving core. Who do they go with at pick 14? I really like Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's not the biggest receiver. He's only 6 foot, but I like him because he's very versatile. He's a smooth route runner. He can play in the slot, but not a lot of people know this, but he can be kicked out wide. He can, he has deep threat potential. It may not be the biggest, may not have the fastest speed, but he can be kicked out wide and he can be a deep threat. So I like Jackson Smith-Njigba just because you can kick him out wide if need be. Great hands, great route running skills. Primarily probably would play in a slot, but who knows? You could kick him out wide and just kind of do whatever you want with him. So I like Jackson Smith-Njigba at pick 14 of the Patriots. And again, it's a tough one, but I just, I kind of see him as like the Jacoby Myers, because he can play slot, he can play out wide. You can do what you want with him, and when you have Mac Jones, who's going into year 3, you really want this to be his breakout year. And with their new offensive coordinator, with all the additions, you hope that you can still get him a wide, because that has been the main thing they haven't had, is a wide receiver 1, and hopefully Jackson Smith and Jigba can be that guy at pick 14. Up next at pick 15, I have the Green Bay Packers going with Dalton Kincaid, and I know it's more of a basic pick. I know I've mocked it a bunch of times, but to me it's just so perfect. Again, I think Quentin Johnson on the board, you could go with someone like him, but to me, Dalton Kincaid, a plug-and-play option. You need to find a replacement for Robert Tonyan. I think he's just that. I think Dalton Kincaid has Travis Kelce potential, just because he's a receiving tight end. He's fast. He has great hands. He has high upside in the blocking game, too, and not a lot of people talk about his blocking ability, but I think he is a good run blocker as well. So Kincaid, very versatile, and he's exactly what you want when you have a young quarterback trying to ease into the starting role. Kincaid, just another weapon for Jordan Love to utilize. Up next at pick 16, the Commanders, and this is an interesting one. I could see them going someone like Deonte Banks, focusing on that secondary, but I think the bigger need is an offensive tackle. They desperately need a left tackle, and the interesting thing with this too is, PFF says their biggest need is quarterback. I don't think it is. You have Jacoby Brissett. You have Sam Howell. I think it's Sam Howell time. I think Sam Howell is their quarterback of the future. I'm very, very high on Sam Howell, and I think the biggest step to help him improve and develop and to lead that team is to get him protection. That offensive line was very bad last season, and I think there is a chance they could go with someone like, they could trade down and go with someone like O'Cyrus Torrence. Maybe they stay at pick 16 and even get him. But I think you go with the best offensive tackle available. Now, I like Darnell Wright too, because he can play left and right tackle. He's versatile. Played right tackle last year, played left tackle in 2021, and then he played right tackle again in 2020. So Darnell Wright's versatile, but I like Anton Harrison because he is a primary main left tackle, played left tackle all 3 years of college for him. And I think that's exactly what you want, someone who is a main left tackle who can hold down the left tackle side. And I think that's exactly what you want. Protecting Sam Howell, because I think that is the biggest step you can take to protecting him so he can take his next step in at quarterback. Up next at pick 17, we have the Steelers, and I think it comes down between an offensive tackle and a cornerback. That offensive line has improved, especially on the interior. It has improved a ton this offseason. I think they could use another tackle, though, to solidify it. Or you go with a cornerback. I like Joey Porter, still on the board at pick 17. His dad was a linebacker for the Steelers. Joey Porter has good size. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. I like him. He's very smart. He's kind of exactly what Mike Tomlin would look for in a quarterback, just a very smart, elusive cornerback. And I think they go cornerback. I think they go with Joey Porter. They need to upgrade that secondary, and I think Joey Porter is the best cornerback on the board. I'm higher on him than I am on Deonte Banks. I like Deonte Banks as well, but Joey Porter's size and just kind of the smartness in Joey Porter I like. And I think Joey Porter is a perfect pick for the Steelers at pick 17. Up next at pick 18, we have the Lions, and I already picked it on accident, but I have them going with Bryan Bresee. They took Christian Gonzalez at pick 6. I think Bryan Bresee is perfect for them. They need help all over that defensive front, especially on the interior. Bryan Bresee, who is very explosive off the ball, run stopper, you can develop him as well. I think you could go with someone like Michael Mayer, get another tight end after losing TJ Hawkinson, but I think you want to improve that defense as much as possible. You already improved the secondary with Christian Gonzalez. Now you really need to focus on that defensive front, and Bryan Bresee I like. Also, this is a pretty thin interior defensive line class. It gets a little thicker in like the 3rd, 4th round, but I think you want to go ahead and take the best defensive lineman available, and you go ahead and you take him in, Bryan Bresee. Up next, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and this is an interesting one. I think there's a lot of options you could go. You could go someone like Lucas Van Ness, Deonte Banks, Brian Branch, upgrade that secondary or the defensive front. I have them going offensive tackle, though. You lost Donovan Smith. I think you want to go ahead and replace your right tackle, and I like Darnell Wright because he's versatile. He can play left tackle, but he plays primarily right tackle. Let me see. He played right tackle in 2020. Last year he played right tackle in 2022, left tackle in 2021, and then he played right tackle again in 2020. So I like Darnell Wright. Can play primarily right tackle, which is where they need to tackle, but if need be, you can flex him into left tackle. So I like Darnell Wright to the Buccaneers. I think the Bucs really have all the options in the world they could go with. They could go with something like Deonte Banks and upgrading that secondary, but I think you want to go ahead and keep that offensive line elite, or not elite, but you want to keep it at least somewhat decent, and going Darnell Wright to hold down both tackle spots. Up next at pick 20, we already mocked it on accident, but I have the Seahawks going Zay Flowers. I know it's a bit of a surprising pick. They need a wide receiver 3. They need someone who can be a deep threat. Tyler Lockett, who is a deep threat. DK Metcalf, who is a deep threat, but I think if you can get someone who has that sheer speed, and that deep threat, quickness, explosive ability, which Zay Flowers has. I think that would massively help that offense. And I like Zay Flowers again. We already went Will Anderson at pick 5 with the Seahawks, so they don't really need another edge rusher. You could go with someone like Mozzie Smith. I'd be looking to trade down if I was going to go with Mozzie Smith. I think if Brian Brzee was on the board, you could go with Brian Brzee and help that interior, because they still do need help on that interior D-line. But I think you want to look to that offense and you want to see what do we need, and a wide receiver 3 who can be a deep threat with sheer speed, which Zay Flowers is. So I like Zay Flowers at pick 20 to the Seahawks. Next up at pick 21, we have the Chargers, and I have them going Deonte Banks. I've had them going Deonte Banks in a lot of mock drafts, and it's probably getting a little repetitive. And next mock draft, I will try to change it up. But I think Deonte Banks to the Chargers just makes a lot of sense. They need another cornerback. And on paper, that secondary is pretty good, but in reality, last year it was not. So they need to get another cornerback behind J.C. Jackson, who Deonte Banks can, I think he can be plug and play at cornerback too. And I like him. I think, you could go with someone like Quentin Johnson. I don't think wide receiver is their biggest need, but, if Quentin Johnson's on the board, I do think there's a chance they could go with him. Maybe even tight end. They do need another tight end, but I don't know. I like Deonte Banks to the Chargers. I know it's kind of repetitive. I've mocked it a bunch of times, but I like Deonte Banks to the Chargers and kind of upgrading that secondary. Next up at pick 22, we have the Ravens. Now, I think the obvious answer everyone would say is Quentin Johnson. He's still available. They need a receiver. I know they signed Odell Beckham Jr. To me, that was one of the worst signings ever. You overpaid him. It's only going to be a 1-year deal. They still need help long-term for the receiver core. I could see them going receiver here and getting a long-term receiver, but to me, I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to be a Raven. I don't see a world where he suits up. I think eventually he would just hold out. If he doesn't get a trade, I think he'll just hold out till he's a free agent next year and the franchise tag is over. So to me, I'm not looking at offense right now. I'm looking at defense. I think you just kind of have to accept that your offense is going to be very horrible next year. Lamar Jackson, even if he does play, that offense is not going to be good. I mean, it's so confusing because, on one hand, yes, you could go receiver. Now that I think about it, I mean, it's so complicated. To me, though, I just do not see Lamar Jackson playing. If I knew he was going to play and I knew he was going to suit up in a Ravens jersey next year and play, I could, you could invest in a receiver and kind of load up on that offense. But to me, I just don't see a world where Lamar Jackson plays. If he doesn't get a trade, I think he'll just sit out and wait till he's a free agent next year. So to me, I think you might as well just focus on that defensive front. It needs a lot of improvement. Your secondary also needs a lot of improvement. There's not much depth at cornerback, though. So I like going with an edge rusher here. You need help on that defensive front. You need help on the interior. You need help on the edge as well. I like Lucas Van Ness, freak athlete, great size. He's 6'5", 270 pounds. I like Van Ness, explosive. Might take a little time to develop, but within probably halfway through the season, you'll really start to see the impact Van Ness can have on that defensive front. So I like it. And again, you could go receiver, but to me, if Lamar Jackson isn't playing, I just don't see a point in investing in that offense really. In the early rounds, maybe in like the third round, you could try to snag someone, but to me, I say just focus on that defense and lock it down for this year, and then next year you kind of rebuild that offense. Up next at pick 23, we have the Vikings, and they desperately need another receiver, and I like Jordan Addison. I like him because he's versatile. He can play slot, or he can be kicked out wide, and he's just a smooth route runner, great hands, can be a deep threat, can be in the slot. I mean, like I said, he's versatile. You could go someone like Quentin Johnson, but to me, I'm much higher on Jordan Addison than I am on Quentin Johnson. There's a lot the Vikings need. I mean, I'm looking just at the overall board. You could go with someone like Myles Murphy, get some youth on that edge. But, I mean, the Vikings need a lot of help, but I like Jordan Addison. I think he'd be a great complementary weapon, great wide receiver too behind Justin Jefferson. And if he can learn and develop behind Justin Jefferson, I think that would be a great receiving duo. And, yeah, I like it. Up next at pick 24, we have the Jags, and I think you're looking at Brian Branch. He's still on the board. They do need some versatility in that backfield. And that secondary, it's still young, it's still developing, but it was pretty bad. Not pretty bad, but it was below average, I'll say, last year, and I think Brian Branch is the perfect guy to help that secondary develop. He can play primarily in the nickel. You can also put him he can play primarily in the slot. You can also put him in the nickel if need be. Smart player, hard hitter, and I think he's exactly what you're looking for when you have a secondary trying to develop. I like Brian Branch a lot to the Jags. Up next at pick 25, we have the Giants, and I think seeing Quentin Johnson on the board is a blessing. Now, I'm not as high on Quentin Johnson as I was earlier in the year. He does have an 11.8% drop rate. He's not the best at contested catches. He's not a very good route runner, but he's still a freak athlete. And I think if he can develop and he can get with the NFL trainers and NFL personnel and they can develop him to use his athleticism to his advantage, I think he is going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL. And you can come back to this video when, he turns out to either be a bust or a great prospect, or not a prospect, but a great player. But to me, I just think he's a developmental receiver who, again, is a great receiver. He was great in college, but it's going to be tough to transfer that to the NFL. So he's going to take time to develop. And I think the Giants, they're willing to take the gamble on him. They're willing to bet on him. And they go with Quentin Johnson just because of the potential and the ceiling he has. And again, the drops you can fix that. It's just a matter of, time and getting him to getting him to improve on the route running and getting him to use his size and his athleticism to his advantage. So I like Quentin Johnson to the Giants. He just is going to take a little time to develop. Up next at pick 26, we have the Cowboys. Now, I think it comes down to running back or tight end. Michael Mayer is still on the board. I think that's an underrated pick that they could go tight end at pick 26, but Bijan Robinson is still on the board, and I think if he's on the board, it's a no-brainer for the Cowboys. You franchise tagged Tony Pollard, you lost Ezekiel Elliott, and Bijan Robinson to me is generational talent. He is so good, and this is a pretty thin running back class. I mean, you have Jahmyr Gibbs, you could take a gamble on later, Zach Charbonnet, I think that's how you say his name, but, Bijan Robinson, the best running back in the class by far, and I think he's a great addition. You already improved that receiving core. I think, again, you could use another tight end, you could go with Michael Mayer, but Bijan Robinson on the board at pick 26, I think that's a no-brainer. Next up at pick 27, we have the Bills, and I already mocked on accident, but I have them going Myles Murphy. There's not really any good secondary members I'm willing to take a bet on with my 27th overall pick. I'm looking at the edge rusher. It's Von Miller. I cannot imagine him being in Buffalo much longer. He's nearing the end of his career, it seems like. So I like getting some young youth on the edge in Myles Murphy, who can be a plug-and-play guy, or you can kind of have him develop. 6'5", 258 pounds, massive guy. And I like him because, like I said, he's a freak athlete, and to me, he's kind of underrated. So you let him develop behind Von Miller, and I think he is going to be a great edge rusher in a few years. Next up at pick 28, we have the Bengals, and I have him going on the interior defensive line in Mazi Smith. I'm very high on Mazi Smith, 6'3", 320 pounds. He is an absolute tank, and we saw that last year at Michigan. They do need help on the interior D-line. I could also see them going cornerback. Maybe you take a bet on like Cam Smith. I like Cam Smith a lot, but to me, you really need to get help on that interior defensive line. Mazi Smith is just the guy. He's a tank. He's huge. He's physical, big, and I think that's exactly what you're looking for on that defensive front. You could also go with someone like Michael Mayer. He's still on the board, but to me, I look at the tight end class. It's pretty stacked, and I'm comfortable with waiting like the second or third round for a tight end. To me, though, I like Mazi Smith and making an immediate impact on that defensive front. Next up, we have the Saints, and I think there's a lot of different options. You could go with someone on the defensive front, Will McDonald, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, I believe I said that right. You could go with someone like O'Cyrus Torrence and upgrading that interior offensive line because you do need help there. But to me, I like Michael Mayer. You want to get Derek Carr as many weapons and upgrade that offense as much as possible. You really need a tight end. I know Taysom Hill's a tight end, but to me, you get Michael Mayer, who is a great blocking tight end, great hands, great contested catcher. He doesn't have the biggest run after catch upside, but to me, that's not really a problem here. I think Michael Mayer would fit well in that Saints offense, and I like him at pick 29 to the Saints. Now at pick 30, we have the Eagles, and I have them going inside offensive lineman and O'Cyrus Torrence to plug and play at right guard. O'Cyrus Torrence is the best offensive lineman in the class by far, and I really like him. Again, he can plug and play at right guard. Didn't allow a single sack or quarterback hit last year at Florida, and I think he's a no-brainer for the Eagles. You could also go with someone like Will McDonald, get him in a rotational piece on that defensive front. Not really any defensive lineman I'm looking to take a gamble on. No really good safeties here. So I like O'Cyrus Torrence. At pick 10, they went with Devin Witherspoon. And I think, you could really look to improve that defensive front, get some youth, because that is a pretty aging defensive front. Get someone to replace Javon Hargrave, but to me, there's not really anyone I'm willing to take a gamble on at pick 30, so I like O'Cyrus Torrence and, get an immediate fix for that right guard spot. Up next, at pick 31, we have the Chiefs, and there's a bunch of different options you could go with. You could go with, like, Will McDonald to get some help on the edge. You could look at the receiving core, see if there's any receivers you want to take a bet on at pick 31. To me, though, I like going offensive tackle here, and I like going DeJuan Jones. You got Jawan Taylor to hold down the left tackle position. Now you want to go out and get a right tackle. I like DeJuan Jones, plays primarily right tackle. And I think you want to protect Patrick Mahomes as much as possible. And again, you need another receiver, but I'm looking at the receiving core, And I think you're willing to bet and wait till like the second or third round to really improve that secondary. The receiving core. Someone like Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, who I'm very high on both of them. A.T. Perry, I'm very high on. Rashee Rice, Nathaniel Dell, Josh Downs. I could see them going Josh Downs as well at pick 31 if he's still on the board. But to me, I think you want to protect that offensive line and improve it as much as possible. And I think you go with DeJuan Jones to protect that right tackle position. But yeah, guys, there you have it. That was my mock draft 5.0, I believe, round 1, 5.0. I think it might have been 4.0, but I think it is 5.0. This one definitely the craziest one I've done. Bryce Young at 1 to the Panthers, Anthony Richardson at 2 to the Texans. Both crazy moves, and especially Anthony Richardson. The Colts traded up for C.J. Stroud. The Lions took Christian Gonzalez, solidifying that secondary. I think with trading Jeff Okudah away, you need to fix that secondary and solidify it with Christian Gonzalez. Patriots went Jackson Smith and Jigba. They go ahead and get themselves a versatile wide receiver. Commanders go Anton Harrison to get a solid left tackle. Jags go Brian Branch. I haven't really mocked that too much. The Ravens go Lucas Van Ness. I think, in my eyes, you just want to focus on improving that defense and kind of locking it down. That offense is going to suck. Lamar Jackson is not going to be in a Ravens jersey. He's either going to sit out and hold out till next year, or he's not going to be on the Ravens. So my opinion on that is you just improve that defense as much as possible. Seahawks go Zay Flowers, so you want to get a versatile deep threat. I like Zay Flowers. He's fast, he's speedy, and I think he's a great deep threat option for a wide receiver 3. The Bucs go Darnell Wright. I like him. He can play right tackle. They need to improve that right tackle position. He's versatile. He can also play left tackle. The other one was the Titans traded up for Will Levis, and the Raiders traded down for Kalijah Kinsey. They need help on the interior. Again, on the Titans trading up, I'm not for that at all. I think if you're going to improve that offense, it needs to be the offensive line followed by the receiving core. I do not think Malik Willis is the problem. And sure, if you don't like him, that's fine. But before you go out and get another quarterback, and especially a developmental quarterback like Will Levis, you need to improve that offensive line and that receiving core. So to me, I know there's been a lot of rumors and trade talk that the Titans could trade up for a quarterback. I do not like that at all. I don't understand it. But that's been the buzz, that they do trade up for a quarterback. So I decided to do one where they do trade up. I might do one where they trade up with pick 3 and the Cardinals, but that'll be for a different mock draft. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you guys did, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. And yeah, thank you guys. It's been more Jay Lay, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.